IVM.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. This is DJ, your host for the week, and I'm joined for the first half of this podcast by Ashwin Garg, all the way from the US. Ashwin, how are you doing, man?
Very good, man. Like we've been talking, there's finally live cricket back. It feels like cricket's in the news again. I was talking to a friend of mine who said between the English Premier League, which obviously just wrapped up, European soccer, which is on right now, baseball has restarted here, basketball has restarted, golf is on right now. It feels like there's a lot going on, but it also feels like we deserve it, right? Sports fans have lived for over 100 days with no real live sports, so just excited that it's back.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be living in the UK, I have to say, because it's perfect time zone. Even during a work day, you can sit in front of your computer, the cricket's going on in the background. It's England was playing ODIs versus Ireland after the West Indies series, which they won. Pretty interesting stuff went on there. And then the day after Ireland actually beat England in the third ODI, chasing 329, the Pakistan test started literally after that. I mean, the first thing I want to just bring out on that, maybe we were talking a few months ago, we were talking about having different teams completely for different formats, right? But we've actually seen this for the very first time, brought about by the COVID biosecure bubble and the need to have two completely separate teams with no crossover between them, which, I don't know, I found that incredible, Ashwin.
Yeah, and I mean, it does say a lot to kind of the England administration and whether you think about Andy Flower or Andrew Strauss or these guys over the last few years and the choice they've made to be able to have a world-class ODI 11 and a world-class Test 11 with no overlap. I think, honestly, without getting into too much more, it's been more than a year now since Ben Stokes has played an ODI. And the last one was the final of the 50-over World Cup that happened. That was the last time
he hasn't played
a
single ODI after that?
Has not played a single ODI since. There was a Cricinfo article that just showed the longest gap between the player of the man of the match in the final of the World Cup and the next time they played an ODI. And for Ben Stokes, it's still TBD because although England is now playing ODIs, understandably, right call, 100%, they've picked prioritizing for tests. But, there's probably maybe 2 or 3 casualties, quote unquote, for the ODI side that we lose by needing 2 separate sides. But amazing. I mean, great from the administration, great from the players that you can have 2 completely separate sides. Obviously, during the break, we saw and did, and on Twitter, there were a lot of people talking about if India had 3 separate sides, you'd need to have 33 unique players. Could we do it? And of course we could, but we haven't had to just yet.
Incredible scenes. I love doing this podcast for these little gems that you drop in sometimes, because I had no idea he hadn't played.
But I don't come up with this stuff. It's all from social media or something I read. But yeah, I will double check or somebody will tweet us in to correct me. But I'm pretty sure I saw on Cricinfo this is the last game he played was that one, and this is the longest delta.
Incredible. And not a bad way to go out, man. If you're not going to play any more ODI cricket, the World Cup final wasn't a bad way to end that. But let's talk a little bit, Ashwin, about the Ireland series, right? I mean, of course, England were playing ODI cricket against Ireland, and that came very quickly after the West Indies series wrapped up. So fans of cricket were quite happy. Ireland didn't quite compete in the first 2 games. Of course, David Willey left out of that World Cup campaign, picked up wickets, scored runs in the first 2 ODIs. England batting, apart from Johnny Bairstow perhaps in the second and Sam Billings in the first 2 games, didn't really seem to click. But in the third game, it really did come together. And for the first time in the series, Ireland were chasing. And Owen Morgan, who is Irish, of course, by birth, is now the English cricket captain, and has played for Ireland, if I'm not wrong, in ODIs as well, because I'm pretty sure I remember him in a green jersey. He just came out and played them like they were net bowlers, man. He was just smashing it all over the park. He got 100 in almost no time. And they then had a little bit of a collapse. They set 329. Now, I'm going to let you talk through the rest of that, because obviously 329 is a number quite close to Irish fans, because that was the number that they beat England with the last time. So what happened next?
Yeah, absolutely outstanding. And I mean, chasing 329, they came in, got off to a reasonable start, and then ended up, 50 for 1. And so at 50 for 1 after, call it 9 overs, you had Paul Stirling, absolute legend of Ireland cricket, right? Just one of the stalwarts of the game. And the current skipper, Andrew Balbirnie, were both at the crease. And it just felt like they were batting on a different pitch with a different side against different bowlers versus the first two ODIs, and just stunning. I mean, each ended up putting up a century. Sterling went all the way to 142. Balbirnie made 113, and they ended up getting to victory with one ball to spare. So they won the match, ended up on 329, which was their target of 49.5 overs. So just outstanding. Honestly, as the ODI game resumed and all the conversation about World Cups, etc., which we'll talk about, and Ireland, and we've talked over and over again over the years about expanding the game. Do we want more countries coming in, etc.? The teams that are called on the fringes of the big, let's say, big 8 teams, you want them to do well. You so badly want them to do well. And here they come in against an England side with fast bowlers, all-rounders, batsmen, played the World Cup final just over a year ago, who aren't even playing because of this 2 separate teams. And they get crushed in the first 2 games. So not an unexpected result in the series, but very, very nice redemption for Ireland and for the game of cricket as a whole to see Ireland chase down 329.
And I love Paul Sterling as a cricketer, man. He looks like he's not past that yo-yo test or whatever that they've got in now. But he can bat, dude. And that is your primary skill. Are you going to pick someone who can run like a fast 100 meters, or are you going to pick a guy who can hit the ball 150 meters? And
that's a contentious question, which many skippers and coaches have answered the different way, who they've said we focus on fitness. But you're right.
Like Umar Akmal, right? He's a casualty of the process. Well, depends on how you look at it.
Depends on what you call a casualty. So, anyway.
Yeah, the interesting point on that, those Ireland ODIs, it was part of this ODI Super League, right? And that serves as a part of the process of qualification for the 2023 World Cup. Now, India have obviously qualified magically by virtue of being hosts, so we don't need to go through any of that, which I frankly find fascinating. But I think I was a little bit ambushed by this ODI Super League. But do you think that the fact that qualification points are up for grabs actually spurred Ireland to even play to their absolute maximum capability in that last ODI? Because otherwise it was a meaningless game. I mean, they'd already lost the series.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was just pulling up the Super League stuff while you were talking, and it looks like you get points for a win and you don't get any points for a loss. So actually, unlike the Test series, the Test championship, the series result is less relevant. So yeah, Ireland at this point have 10 points and England have 20. So you could look at it and say Ireland got crushed in the series, or you could look at it and say England is 1 game ahead of Ireland in the rankings of 20 points versus Ireland's 10. So I think you're probably right. I give credit to the ICC. I've said this before, and every sporting organization is full of positives and negatives, but I give credit for them to come up with innovation like this. We sit and complain when they do nothing and there's no significance to meaningless bilateral ODIs, etc. And now people are complaining that, this format for the Super League, ODI Super League qualification for the World Cup is so complicated and this and that. There's no winning with fans. I don't think that's just cricket. I think that's any sport, by the way. But I'm happy that there's significance now to the ODIs.
Yeah, interesting, because, I mean, even somebody like us and somebody like me and you who follow cricket so closely, I have to say, I wasn't aware of this ODI Super League before the Ireland ODIs actually kicked off. And that's when there was all the buzz around the ODIs and the Super League and stuff. And the point on the World Test Championship you made, I think the series is relevant because it all goes for 120 points. Now, how you split that is dependent on the number of matches and stuff, right?
Correct.
But over here, as you said, it's like
the final test does still matter in a series. You're right. That's a good clarification.
Correct. So interesting though, but as you said, it doesn't matter which series in the Super League you play, you'll still get 10 points for a win, which I think it keeps, and we talked about this when we were talking about the different formats. And as you said, we were talking about context, giving ODIs context. And I think this does give ODIs context. So interesting. Talking of the World Test Championship, Ashwin, let's move on to the England versus Pakistan Test series. Now, there was all the chat about how Pakistan's going to be great because they've got no crowds and they're used to playing this. And apparently there was some of that. And Shan Masood came out and scored 156 in the first innings. Babar I have to say, look bloody good, man. I mean, that guy can bat. And they got 300. They took a 100-run lead. And then, you know what Pakistan's all about? Like, they're predictably unpredictable. They got to 160, I think 169 in third innings. And still set England quite a stiff target, right? They set England 200 and... how much did they get them? 279?
277.
277, right? apparently only two teams or one team had ever scored more than that to win a test match at Manchester.
I don't remember that stat, but I do remember Pakistan had never lost, I think, when they had a target, or in the recent history, when they had set a target of 250 plus in the fourth innings. And so that was, 277 felt pretty safe, I'll say.
277 is a lot of runs to get in the last innings, man. But this is the team which has, as you said, Ben Stokes in it, the miracle man, the miracle of Headingley. It scored 135, chasing 300 odd, 350 odd. And Chris Wokes had actually spoken about how Ben Stokes has given this team the belief that they can win from anywhere. And who else but Chris Wokes and the other guy? It was quite a surprising... I think the heroes were quite surprising, Ashwin. I don't know what you thought about that. Because they weren't the two names you would have pulled out and said, these guys are going to win England the game. So I'm going to let you carry on with the rest of the last innings.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? You're obviously, the two names you're talking about are Chris Wokes and Jos Buttler, who Buttler bats at 6, Wokes bats at 7. There are a lot of people in the England kind of setup, by that I mean fans and other folks in the game, who believe that is not a strong enough 6 and 7, because you got Buttler, who's been erratic at best as a test player. He's not a great keeper. All the statistics were flying about Buttler's ineptitude behind the stumps.
And he had a bad game as well. He missed stumpings.
And Jimmy
missed
Anderson
catches.
Doesn't let any of us forget it, right? Jimmy Anderson was like cursing and kicking the ground and just upset at Buttler, and in some cases justified, in some cases not. But anyway, all that to say, I was listening to our friends at Gorilla Cricket who do, radio commentary for these games, for England games. So definitely check them out. But one of the things they were saying is Ben Foakes, who's the next best keeper in the England setup, if you will, who's had some amazing test performances, who's always left out. You must think this guy always thinks he's just one more bad Buttler match away from getting his call up. And that's the only time Buttler goes off and performs. And so now Butler's re-justified his call-up again for a few test matches at least. He'll probably do poorly for a few. And then if history is any thing to learn from, he'll probably do poorly for a few. And just as they're considering, should we drop him and upset the balance that he provides to bring in a specialist keeper, he's going to go out there and do well. So credit where it's due, though. Buttler made a 50 in his previous test too against the West Indies. But yeah, they came out. I mean, when you're chasing 277, they were 117 for 5. And at that point, Jos Buttler and Chris Wokes are at the crease. They end up batting a very, very, very long, by the standards of a 6 and 7, a very long session. Buttler ended up getting out near the end, got 75. So just fell short of getting them over the line when the team needed 17 more runs. Buttler got 75. Chris Wokes picked up 84 runs in addition to the 2 wickets he got in the second innings, 2 wickets in the first innings, ended up with the man of the match trophy. And that's if you want to play 4 specialist, quote unquote, quicks and 1 specialist spinner, the fact that one of your quicks can bat at 7 and take you over the line, incredible. So kudos to Team England. Disappointed for Pakistan, I think. When you set 277 and get the opposition to 117 for 5, that's your game and you need to find a way to take it home, but sets up an exciting next test.
Yeah, it does. I wonder what Varun thinks of all this. I know he's got that man crush on Chris Wokes, right? And
it will be interesting to find out.
Yeah, I mean, where is Varun, by the way? What's he up to? He's sleeping right now, but we haven't heard very much from him since the Danny episode, right? I don't know what he's up to.
Yeah, you have to believe, as we were saying before we started recording, right? The Danny Morrison episode for Varun was just peak edges and Sledges, right? At this point, he's not part of the interview we have in the second half. He is not here today, so we'll see. Who knows when he's going to be back on the show, hopefully sooner rather than later, but 100% you have to believe Danny Morrison on Edges and Sledges was the peak for Varun.
Do you think he's pulled a Ben Stokes? He's like, I won the World Cup with Danny. I'm never coming back to play ODI cricket again. But yeah,
I really hope not. It's fun having him on the show. But
yeah, of course. I think we're just kidding. We're just pulling his leg to see whether he actually listens to this and then comes
That's
back
the
to
real
us.
Test, right? If we get a message with him upset that we were making fun of him on the show, then we know he listened to this. If not, then it's just the rest of you guys who are listening and Varun didn't actually listen.
Absolutely. I know. I mean, frankly, the IPL's coming up, man. The IPL's coming up in about a month's time, a month and 10 days, right, when it starts. So let's talk IPL, Ashwin. I've actually got a spreadsheet with all our listeners who've written in with voice notes. We've got 24 voice notes. I'll be sending 24 emails out, and hopefully we can have you all on the show during the IPL talking about your respective teams. We've got good coverage on all the teams, so really pleasing. But let's talk IPL, and then we'll talk some World T20 and World Cup and stuff. if we're talking IPL, we've got to talk about Rishabh Pant, right? We talked about Josh Butler, who's like the English version of Rishabh Pant. But Pant has been in the nets and smashing the bowlers everywhere. Ashwin, how excited did that tweet get you from ESPN Cricinfo with Rishabh Pant getting into the IPL mode?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we should probably address Butler will take a little bit of offense to that, right? Butler.
I'm pretty sure Pant's test average is much higher than Butler's.
Butler's test average is 32.3, Pant is 38. But Pant has played 13 tests. Butler's played 45 tests.
Okay,
Butler's also played 142 ODIs, including being a World Cup champion.
But does Butler make your greatest of all time IPL team, like Varun's IPL team, which won the whole show?
Neither of them should make anybody's greatest all-time IPL team, but that's a discussion for a different day. Yeah, man, super exciting to see that video. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll post it in the show notes or retweet it. But Rishabh Pant in the net's just outstanding to watch him, and just so exciting to think that we're at 6.5 weeks away from the time of recording this. There it is. You're showing me on the screen while I talk, but outstanding to watch him. I don't know who was bowling. I don't know what level of cricket he was playing, but just nice to see. And, after Kohli posted that video of him in the nets, I think it was in the lead up to the India-Australia series, where the camera was perfectly positioned. The microphone picked up the sound of the ball on the willow. Now everybody's doing it. And plug for our episode with Jadev Unadkat that we had a few weeks ago in this quarantine. He's been posting some
those Yorkers,
videos of him on Instagram, not on Twitter.
Been hitting the stumps, one stump, right?
Unbelievable. Unadkat's just outstanding. He had an amazing last year, and obviously everybody's starting to gear up for the IPL. So super, super excited. We're going to talk so much about the lead up to the IPL in the nenext few weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah, love it. And the other thing that Rishabh Pant posted was his prize from Ashish Nehra, man. So you remember Kohli had come out with a photo of him as a 10-year-old or something getting a prize from Ashish Nehra, which went viral. And now Rishabh Pant has posted something about memories and throwback and stuff. I mean, how did Ashish Nehra have all this time on his hands to give prizes to school kids? It seems that's all he did in Delhi. I'm surprised now we don't have prizes from Nehra ji.
When you say we, you probably mean you, because I was never in any position to get any cricket prizes from Nehra. I was maybe third choice for any team, or in the third string of a Blue House team even. But for you, you may have gotten a prize from Nehra. You were pretty good at the local cricket scene. Yeah, it's just fun, right? It's always nice to see these memories come up. I mean, yesterday, I think Jemima Rodriguez, who we've also had on the show, posted a picture of her getting a prize from Dhoni.
You're on some plugging form today.
Yeah, man. This was not planned, I promise you guys. But I just saw the picture of her getting a prize from Dhoni. And these are just fantastic moments to see when you watch players in their youth doing well, getting recognition at that point, and then obviously come up and do well at the international level too. So great fun. By the way, before you move on to our next topic, because Varun, our resident social media guru and expert, is not here, we should also take a second to say congratulations to the very awesome Indian leg spinner Yuzvendra Chahal for his recent engagement. As of this morning, I saw he's announced on social media that he's now engaged. So very exciting. Sorry?
To Dhanashri, right?
To Dhanashri. I don't know much about her or them as a couple or their relationship and stuff, but I will say congratulations. Very exciting for him. Who knows what weddings will look like in the next little bit, but super exciting news. So good for Chahal. I mean, I'm sure we'll see how much his social media antics and how much TikTok continues after his married life begins, but one step at a time.
So I think TikTok's been banned, so that's not happening. But his wife is called Dhanashri Verma, and she's a YouTuber. That's what I'm looking at.
So maybe he's going to pick up and start showing up in some YouTube videos. And
yeah.
Stuff, right?
So it's very, very cool. But congratulations, man. Yeah, that's a nice thing. Good luck to him for his married life. But we're talking IPL, right? And earlier in the week, we tweeted out, tell us your favorite IPL moment. And we got loads of responses. We'll put the tweet in the show notes so you guys can go through all the responses. We got some fantastic responses. I mean, it ranged from the 2008 Rajasthan Royals win to the recent 2019 Malinga slower ball. There was lots of the Aditya Tare six, the Dravid throwing of the cap. Just reading those responses, Gale 175, just reading those responses got me so excited. Just an incredible response, guys. So thank you so much for writing in. Ashwin, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite IPL moment across the 12 years, you have to pick only one. And I'm going to take one of those moments out by picking mine first. And it's the Rabada Yorker to Andre Russell. Oh my God. What a ball.
That was going to be mine. I have that video.
No, I knew you were going to pick it. That's why I wanted to get it.
That's fine. I had a second. I was struggling to choose anyway. But yeah, I was going to say, I have that saved on my desktop. I have it saved on my phone. I'll watch it anytime. I feel like it's just outstanding. It's an outstanding moment. But that's from 2019. You picked you had recency bias.
Recency bias, man. Yeah, because Delhi's never won the IPL. Maybe I'd have picked that if they won. But what is your second moment?
Delhi
let's share the first one.
Yeah, Delhi has not won the IPL yet, my friend.
Yet. So we can share that one. Let's go for the next one. I think that is the top moment ever, the Super Over. Incredible.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, for me, it's more history and emotion and nostalgia related. And it's actually like the first ever game. And it's Brendan McCullum, 158, KKR. Because I just have I think I've talked about this on the show before, but I have such a distinct memory. I was in college at the time. We got together at 6 a.m. in the common room. I think somebody had to shimmy open the door to the engineering building because it was a weekend. It was before the building was supposed to be open. It's been long enough now that I can talk about that. But yeah, and we got together and nobody really knew what to expect, right? You'd seen this auction. You had seen all these players playing for different teams. These KKR with the funky colored, interesting name and celebrity owners. And McCullum just came out and that is what cemented the future of this tournament. That is why 12 years later, we're sitting here excited for it to start in September in the UAE in a year during COVID, right? And I think that to me is just a memory I will never forget because it cemented the importance of IPL in world cricket for me.
And we also got, I think that's a great response. That's a great moment, of course. I mean, iconic, right? With the golden helmets and all of that stuff. I think it was the Nokia branding as well. That's what I remember. Because there was Akhtar spell that year from that blew Delhi away, sadly. I remember watching that.
Brett Lee was playing in that team, Callis, and it was unreal. So.
Yeah. And there's a great article actually. You mentioned COVID and the IPL and the UAE, and there's a great article. Of course, Vivo has pulled out as the lead sponsor, right? So we're now without a headline sponsor. I don't know whether Gillette's looking. Just putting it out there.
Unfortunately, India is a little outside my purview, although I do work on the Gillette US business. So maybe I'll send a message to somebody, see if anybody's interested.
Well, I mean, there's lots of beards that can be shaved. That's what I would say during the IPL.
I'm looking at you, man. I'm looking at you right now. You've got a huge, thick beard that you don't support your friend by shaving every day. So.
But the friend should be supporting the show. Anyway, I'm going to focus on this. So there's a great article in Cricinfo about what talks about the logistics of having an IPL outside of India, and the sponsor pulling out. There's a loss of revenue for that. These franchises then need to charter flights and send them to the UAE with the players in them, and then you've got to book out entire hotels for the players. Whereas earlier you would have a block of rooms. So it's a very interesting article by Cricinfo that's talking about the effect of COVID on franchisees and the revenue side of things. I just found that very fascinating because it's not something you think. I mean, you think, yeah, okay, fine, Mukesh Ambani, richest man in the world or richest man in India, doesn't care. But there are smaller franchisee owners that will be affected by this kind of thing. Well, when I say smaller, it's a relative term, right? But I think it's a very interesting article, and it goes behind the commercials of the IPL. So we'll put a note. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Ashwin, a couple more points before we move on to the second half of the show, and we obviously had postponements of the World T20. It was pushed to next year in Australia. It's been moved to 2022 now. So 2021 was already in India, so we're keeping the 2021 tournament, but 2020 has basically skipped 2 years and gone to Australia. So what is your first reaction to that, and why has that happened?
Yeah, so obviously personal disappointment, right? As we said on the show before, we had tickets to the 2020 World Cup in Australia, so that's all gone, like those plans for this October. Obviously, we expected that to happen, but it's not been pushed out like 6 months. It's now been moved 2 years, which is a huge change. I thought about it a lot, right? I did some reading. I talked to some people. I thought about it. I was trying to think through what's the logic. How do they think about that? And of course, you're going to have your, people out there saying, oh, that's because the BCCI runs the ICC and India always gets first priority. And there's probably some element of truth to that. I don't know. I don't have any inside knowledge. But
if you look at it in a data-based fashion, India already had the 2023 World Cup and had the 2021 T20 World Cup. So the choice was, do you not want World Cups in back-to-back years? But even pre-COVID, we knew there was going to be T20 World Cups in back-to-back years, one in Australia, one in India. And the choice was, do you have two back-to-back? Do you push everything out and then have a 22 World Cup and a 23 World Cup in India in different formats? Or in this way, 21 is going to be the shorter format in India, 22 will be the shorter format in Australia, and then 23 is the longer 50 over format back in India. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is nobody's job is easy in this COVID times, right? This is unprecedented as it gets. And so everybody's trying to figure out how to make the most of a very, very, very difficult situation. So I think that's the decision they came to, is so that opens up an IPL window for this fall, as we've talked. And next year you have the World Cup, the T20 World Cup in India.
Does it devalue the T20 World Cup in your eyes a little bit, having it in consecutive years? I mean, if someone wins it in 2021, for it to be lost in 2022, it sounds pretty disappointing. I mean, you're not even world champion for 2 years.
But that was the case anyway, right? Like, you already had Australia 2020 and India 2021. So it was all...
True.
True. What I'm saying is, this is not like, people are upset about that, and it's very valid, but we already had back-to-back years planned pre-COVID. So this is not a change that has been triggered recently. There was always a plan to have 2 back-to-back years so that you could get it with the eventual goal of having them staggered every 2 years. Or I think the goal was 21, 25, 29 would have been T20s, and then 23, 27, 31 would have been 50 overs. Now we've lost that a little bit, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I always think back to like the gap between the 96 World Cup and the 99 World Cup. I always feel a little bad for Sri Lanka because they only got to be champions for 3 years, right? Pretty much.
This is true. And that was also... Yeah, you're right. That was because of the 5-year delay we had between 87 and 92.
87 and 92. But Australia just said we're going to be like...
They got to keep champion. It wasn't because of the global political situation or anything else. It was just because Australia felt like having it an extra year.
That's it. Yeah, interesting. So obviously that's disappointing for fans of the World Game. The associates, of course, disappointed as well. But maybe that tournament can be used as getting the associates in and stuff. But the Women's World Cup as well, which was early next year in February, that's been pushed out as well. Now, I think there's some disappointment in the women's game with all the momentum. And you spoke to Shikha last week before this news actually broke. How disappointed do you think they're going to be? I mean, they had all that momentum going in before COVID, but it's just been halted almost. And they're kind of taking a little bit of a backseat, which is really unfortunate, isn't it?
It absolutely is very unfortunate, right? I think, again, there's always collateral damage when these things happen. They've maintained, I believe, the BBL, women's BBL. They've brought in a few games for the women's IPL, and it's just very, very tough, right? There's no easy answer. There's no Band-Aid solution to any of this. So it's incredibly difficult. But yes, to the 50 over World Cup that was supposed to be in kind of March timing of 2021 has now been pushed to 2022. And it's incredibly unfortunate, very sad for the women's game. My hope is eventually the ICC adds more events back. They're not going to be World Cups, of course. But, Mithali tweeted actually herself saying, hey, let's look at the positives of the situation. This means more time to plan, more time to prepare, more time to, continue strengthening our 11 and our squad. And let's hope that's what they do, because I really feel like this India side has a strong shot at the next global event.
And the reason, just to clarify why it's been postponed, is the inability for other teams, the teams that need to qualify to prepare, right? So that's what the ICC's come out and said, that I think there were 5 teams that had already qualified, basically the big teams, the Indias, the Australias, the South Africas, the England. But there were 3 other teams, and they were due to have a qualifying tournament in July this year, which hasn't taken place, obviously, because of issues with COVID and stuff like that. So I really hope that it was such a good feeling going into all of this, right? Just after the World T20, it was such a positive momentum towards growing the game. There was the 86,174 people that turned up at the MCG. So I really hope that momentum isn't lost in all of this. So let's see how that plays out. But you talked a little bit about what I wanted to bring up with you, and that's the women's BBL. I guess there's a little bit of good news for the Indian women, which was that there will be a Women's Challenger Series. Is that what it's called? The Women's IPL Challenge Series, which is a window of 10 days in November this year. So that's good news. But it's going to clash with the closing stages of the Women's Big Bash in Australia. And Ashwin, you read the tweets. there was an Indian journalist, Boria Majumdar, who's done an Oxford PhD in cricket. I don't know what that means, but he's a Rhodes Scholar. He's obviously involved with journalism, and like he's close to a lot of people in the powers that be. But he tweeted something out. Lisa Healy actually replied to that. So talk our listeners through about what went on there and what a PhD in cricket is, and can we get one, and how do we get one?
Yeah, I can't answer if we'll get a PhD in cricket, but if anybody here is linked to an educational institution and wants to give the Edges and Sledges team an honorary PhD or something, I'm sure we'd be happy to take that.
From Oxford,
that'd be nice.
No less. It has to be from
I don't know if Oxford's going to do that. But
okay,
some institution. But yeah, I mean, basically, Alyssa tweeted back just expressing her dissatisfaction that the window for the women's IPL is right during the WBBL. And so they got into a little bit of a heated discussion. I think they were both saying the right thing, given the perspective they have, where, Boria's point of view was there's no alternative dates and we have to try to figure it out. But Alyssa also was true that there are Indian women players who have signed WBBL contracts. There are squads in the BBL that have built their kind of team structure, et cetera, around relying on those players. And so, I mean, incredibly disappointed, right? Like, it's going to be, somebody's going to feel like they were shortchanged. Either the few Indian women who did have BBL contracts, they may feel it. Would you rather have 4 Indian women's IPL teams playing this Challenger Series than 4 players go to the BBL? Absolutely. And so it's a priority call you have to make, and it's tough because when you're a board that has power and has lots of control over the funding of the game, etc., then you have to make tough calls. I totally understand it. I wish it didn't get as snarky as it did on Twitter. I mean, it's fairly enjoyable, but I wish Alyssa and Boria didn't get quite as snarky. Hopefully we can find some sort of resolution, and hopefully this was a one-time thing in our lives that we don't ever have to deal with again. But yeah, disappointing. Very, very happy for the Indian women who will get an opportunity to showcase their T20 talent through the Women's IPL series, but very disappointed for those who were going to the Big Bash. I hope it doesn't hurt them long-term, where, we know in the men's IPL, it hurts some male players that, their country, like England, for example, tends to schedule games and international games overlapping with the men's IPL. So hopefully the Australian Women's Big Bash franchise owners don't hold it against the Indian women for the long term, but we'll see. Who knows when the Women's IPL becomes its own full season.
I actually think the ACB owns, the Australian Cricket Board owns the Women's Big Bash, like the...
right. So, but I don't know, like, I'm not close enough to who buys players and who gives them contracts and stuff. So my point is I hope the Indian women don't suffer for that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what actually made it all blow up was the Oxford PhD in cricket. It just shows you when Byju's like the sponsor for the Indian cricket team, the value we put on education in India. On that note, Ashwin, it has been really great talking to you this week. I just love this. I mean, we were supposed to have a 10-minute chat. How long have we spoken now? Half an hour?
I have no idea, but it's obviously going to be a very long episode, and it's just great to be able to chat cricket. So not complaining.
Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. So the second half of the show, guys, is an interview with the speedster Tymal Mills. Obviously, very interesting guy, very interesting story. He actually, his origin story is just fascinating. I mean, he basically showed up and played a game, and they gave him the last over to bowl for basically because he was going to pay some match fees, and they said you've got to get a game to pay that match fee, and he bowled pretty quick, and that's how he started off. And it's just a fascinating story, really interesting guy, really open, really good to speak to. So stay tuned for that interview, and that's coming up straight after the break, so don't go anywhere.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. So it's been a really, really fun week this week. We've had a great episode with Anand Nilakant on Cyrus Says. Anand was one of the writers of Bahubali, and he's done some really, really fun stuff since that. Ashish Vidyarthi also had a really good episode on his show, Begin the Journey. Please do check that out. You do know Yuddha is back, right? Definitely check it out if you haven't. Yuddha is our show about Indian ancient warfare. It's hosted by Anirudh Kanisetti and Aditya Ramanathan. Really, really great show. You should check that out for sure. And I forgot. Rishikesh was on the network as well. He was on Absolutely Right with Aditi Surana. Do definitely check that out. With that, let's get you back to the show.
We have yet another special guest on the podcast this week, and it's none other than England speedster Tymal Mills. Tymal, how are you doing? Welcome to the Edge and Sledges Cricket Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for making the time for this, and thanks for coming on the podcast. We're super excited. Obviously, T20 cricket is one of our focuses on this podcast, and we are really, really pleased to have you on. But first, let me ask you, I saw a tweet or a video of yours on Instagram where you were starting to bowl again. How does that feel, Tymal? Because I played a couple of games of Sunday cricket, and I have to say, bowling hasn't been fun.
No, I've pulled up okay actually. I had my third bowl yesterday and bowling again tomorrow. I'm fit and well. I haven't been injured. It was just obviously with the lockdown, we weren't able to train. We were at Sussex. We were placed on furlough. We weren't allowed to go to work. So I hadn't actually bowled since I played in the PSL back in March. So that first session, you're always a little bit nervous how everything's going to feel. But touch wood, everything's felt really good, and I've been able to ramp it up pretty quickly. But it's nice to be back bowling again, definitely.
So you're back to 100% already, or are you kind of 80, 90%, giving it a bit of time?
So towards the end of my session yesterday, I was kind of off my full run up again, which was nice. So tomorrow, I'm bowling at some of the batsmen, so I think it will get a little bit more competitive. I'm sure the physio would like me to hold back a little bit, but you know how it is when you get into the middle and there's actually a batsman there trying to smack you around, you maybe crank it up a little bit more.
I'm sure it'll be okay. Tymal, you mentioned the PSL, and leaving the PSL was one of the things that happened at the start of this lockdown. So talk our listeners through how that went down, because you were actually playing the PSL when the decision was made to kind of call it off. And what was there kind of a crazy frenzy, or what happened there?
Yeah, as you said, I was in Pakistan. Things they got quite serious quite quickly. The whole time we were out there playing, obviously coronavirus was kind of building, wasn't it? Kind of throughout February into March. So we were aware of it. It seemed to hit Pakistan quite late. So there wasn't actually many recorded cases in Pakistan at the time when there was starting to get more and more in the UK. So pretty much a lot of guys were keeping an eye on it, but we weren't too kind of concerned. But then as soon as we saw, so England were out in Sri Lanka about to start a test series also at the same time. And then as soon as we saw that England had cancelled the series and were flying home from Sri Lanka, we were like, maybe we should head back also. So it was just a case of, you don't know what's going to happen with borders, be it flights, being able to get back in and out of countries. And obviously if you are to pick up the virus, you'd rather pick it up in the UK and, in your own home with your family or whatever than have, be stuck in a hotel in Pakistan in our case. So guys just wanted to get home and get to their families. And to be fair, everybody at the PCB and the PSL was very accommodating. They kind of got us all together and, got us on our respective flights back to wherever we needed to head. So it wasn't too much of an issue.
Well, it sounds like a sensible decision was taken, keeping the players' interest in mind, which is good, and it's all worked out well. Obviously, there was a whole thing about Alex Hales having actually got COVID. There was a lot of confusion around that, wasn't there? But maybe let's rewind a little bit, Tymal, to your childhood and how you got into cricket, because that, I think, is a fascinating story. It's one of those stories which you almost hope happens to you, right? Because did you? Because I think I heard on the Jared Kimber podcast, the Red Inker, where you told him about how you got into cricket. But maybe you could just repeat that story, because I think that's an absolutely fascinating way of not only getting into cricket but excelling at it.
Yeah, look, I didn't get into cricket through the traditional avenues. So where I grew up over here in the UK, cricket's not really, the big sport. Certainly in the town that I lived in, cricket wasn't very big at all. I went to state school, so I didn't go to private school. So that's, again, around where I grew up, it's mainly private schools that play cricket, obviously due to the facilities and equipment needed and things like that. So cricket wasn't readily accessible to me. But I'd messed around in the park with mates and stuff, just with an old bat and ball, and kind of the 05 Ashes. I definitely kind of caught cricket fever just in terms of having a go and seeing what it was all about. But I never actually played any structured club cricket until I was around 14 years old. And I remember I was at school one day, and one of my friends' team, he played in a Wednesday night league, kind of 15 overs a side in the evenings and during the summer. And they needed an extra player, and he asked if I could go and help. And so I had to obviously call my mum to make sure she was okay with me not coming home after school and going to play a bit of cricket. And yeah, it went from there really. I'd kind of just played socially. I really enjoyed it. it was pretty obvious quite quickly that I could bowl reasonably quick, certainly quicker than anybody else at that, albeit very low kind of village standard. But yeah, that's where I started, and for kind of 14, 15, I just played village cricket with a few friends, and I kind of went through the system and accelerated my development from there.
That resonates with us so much because we actually have a massive focus in India on gully cricket and street cricket. So when you tell us that you just turned up to play cricket one day, and I think they gave you the last over so that you got a game. So you were the guy who's given the last over of the game. It turned out to be pretty quick. So.
Yeah, as you say, towards the end of the game, they said for helping them out, gave me an over to kind of say thank you. It's very, it's not overly competitive cricket, but you try and give everybody some type of game. Everybody gets a bat or a bowl, so you make sure you get your match fees worth and things. And yeah, I hit somebody. I'm sure I bowled a few wides, no balls in there as well. But maybe I caught myself and a few others by surprise that fateful night when I was 14.
Fantastic. So, Tymal, I play for a Sunday side, so the next time we're short, I might be dropping you a quick message.
There you go, 100%.
Absolutely. So, I think you briefly said how you moved on to the next level, but how do you go from playing village cricket one day to playing T20 cricket for England? I mean, what are the various stages that you go through? Did you get spotted by a scout, or did you play under 19, under 17 representative cricket, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so it's a long story. I won't go into every full detail of every stage, but yeah, so pretty much from that village kind of cricket I played at kind of 14, 15, 16, I then got passed on to kind of the local, the bigger club team that had kind of an established youth setup and a few Saturday teams, nice facilities. That was in the town that I went to school in, so Milden Hall Cricket Club back home. So I moved on to them and I played junior cricket there, and then started off in the club, the Saturday third team, and progressed through there. And then at the same time, I played minor counties cricket. So obviously that's kind of a level below first class cricket in England. So where I grew up in a minor county, so Suffolk. So I got into kind of the Suffolk under 16s and 17s system. And then from there, the Suffolk coaches, they passed me on to the Essex Academy. So Essex were my closest first-class county. So obviously there's a relationship between those counties. And my Suffolk youth coach passed me on to John Childs, who was the academy coach at Essex at the time. And I remember they invited me down at the end of the summer when I was 17, just turned 17. There was a 3-day game, second team match for Essex against Glamorgan's second team, and I think I took 4 wickets in the first innings, and I think I only got 1 in the second innings. But I bowled well, I bowled quick, and then John Childs, the academy director, he gave me an academy contract kind of on the spot there. And then that winter, I kind of spent travelling down to Chelmsford in Essex, which was about a 2-hour one-way trip, to a couple of times a week to train with Essex Academy, and that's kind of the first stage into professional cricket for me.
Incredible. I mean, the amount of work that goes into making a cricketer, and I mean, while you were probably going through it, you probably didn't pay too much attention to it, but when you play it back, it's just an incredible amount of work that goes into it. Obviously, there was a little bit of luck, you being picked up and see people spotting your talent and seeing the raw pace that came through. But were there any role models you had, Tymal, growing up? Were you following, because England hasn't had an express kind of left armour ever. I mean, the one I can think of, not express, but quite good, it's probably Alan Mullally was the last one, and that was some time ago. So were you looking at other countries? I know Wasim Akram was a big influence on some of the Indian left armers. We spoke to Jaydev Nutcut. He said that Wasim was a big influence. And Monty Panesar as well. He was all over Wasim, but he turned into a spinner. But did you have someone you looked up to or tried to model yourself on, or was it just natural?
Yeah, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't really watch cricket growing up. As I said, until that 2005 Ashes, that was the first cricket that really piqued my interest. So as I started to go through the system, and by the time I was playing for the Essex academy level, so I still wasn't professional, but I was in the system. I enjoyed watching guys like Mitchell Johnson, Dirk Nannes, and the like. But I wouldn't say I had any role models, because cricket wasn't a sport that I kind of followed growing up. I was big into my football, basketball, athletics. I did everything else. But yeah, I couldn't honestly say that I had a role model growing up. I was just learning as I went along and enjoying the ride.
That sounds good, because obviously if you were athletic, that would have helped with your cricket as well, because being a fast bowler is all about being an athlete. Like someone like Brett Lee would tell you that. So let's fast forward now that you've started playing professional cricket. How does an England cap come along, and what does it feel like to receive that first cap playing for England?
Yeah, well, obviously a lot happened between, say, making my first class debut when I was 19, I think, or maybe 18 years old, and then I made my England debut when I was 22, I think, maybe 23. So obviously I started off at Essex, predominantly playing 4-day cricket. That's where I got the majority of my kind of opportunity. But then unfortunately I started to suffer injuries after when I was around 21. I had a lot of back problems, stuff that affected kind of my neurological system and my legs. And it was quite scary at a time. And I ended up leaving Essex, moving to Sussex, had a reoccurrence. And then from there, I had the option to retire when I was 22 years old, which wasn't nice to hear. So, it was never an option I was seriously going to take, but it was clearly obvious from the doctors, from the physios, that playing 4-day cricket just wasn't an option for me anymore. My body obviously just wasn't reacting well to it. It wasn't coping with the stress and the repeated amount of overs that you have to bowl. So we thought that we'll give T20s a go. It was an easy decision for me, and I was lucky in terms of I found white ball cricket easier than red ball cricket. I struggled in 4-day cricket for consistency, for accuracy, to bowl those long spells, come back for your third spell, fourth spell. Whereas in white ball cricket, at the time we played 40 over cricket, now 50, and T20 cricket, I just found my skills were a little bit more transferable. That back of a length that I could naturally hit is obviously much more effective in one-day cricket, and I found it quite easy to bowl slower balls and bouncers and the like. So gave T20 cricket a shot, and I took to it kind of like a duck to water, really. And I finished that summer with Sussex, did really well in the T20 Blast, and then I had a lot of help from the ECB in England. They kind of took me away for a whole winter to try and get my body, figure out the best way to train, learn about my body a bit more. So I went away on a few different training camps. I'd go away with, say, the England under-19s, had a training camp in South Africa. Of course, at this time I was too old for that, but it was an opportunity for me to go abroad, with the better weather and train and bowl at some batsmen and things like that. So I had a lot of help from the ECB. And then I came back that summer in the UK, raring to go. And then kind of it all culminated when I took that wicket of Chris Gale, that's obviously been played to death on social media. But then I obviously got my England call up not long after that and made my debut at a T20. It was a one-off T20 against Sri Lanka at the Ageas Bowl, so just about an hour away from where I live now. So it was a nice kind of, I don't want to say ending, but it was kind of to come full circle from pretty much a year before being told that I might have to retire to receiving my England cap and opening the bowling for England. Was it was a really nice moment for me.
Super. A few interesting things there. We recently spoke to someone in Australia, actually, Guy Walker, who played BBL, and he's had to retire in his 20s because he's thrown his shoulder out throwing the ball in at the Gabba in his first T20 game ever. And it's just a shame. He then played AFL, and so obviously retiring at a young age isn't great for the body or the mind, to be honest, but it's great that you came back. And of course the back injury seems to almost have changed your career, because there's lots of cricketers that can't decide whether they're white ball or red ball cricketers, but that decision was almost made for you in some ways, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, you could look back at all, although it was obviously horrible at the time, and it was a pretty unpleasant few days. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. It's just in terms of from that moment, from April 2015 or whenever it was. So I'm pretty bad with years. Since then, all I focused on is 2020 cricket and white ball cricket. I'm not having to think about, okay, how am I going to chain 6 balls together, swinging it back in with the new red ball 3 days a week. And then, okay, all of a sudden, okay, I've got to hit my Yorker, slower ball with bouncers now. And mentally as well, tactically, all I'm thinking about is 2020 cricket, T20 cricket, can train accordingly. It's hard for guys that have to, flick between all the different formats of the game and try and excel at them all. So whilst it puts pressure on you to perform, because it's obviously all you have, it definitely accelerated my development just playing T20 cricket and learning kind of as I went through, and obviously then getting opportunities to play in leagues all around the world. And I can't say I regret anything of how the last many years have gone.
Before we come to the big one, the IPL and the other T20 leagues, can I just check, are you still contracted to Sussex? Because I know you mentioned on the Red Inker podcast that you had a contract with them which kind of helped with your injury management and things which other T20 freelancers wouldn't have. So does that contract still continue?
Yeah. So I'm still contracted through to Sussex till the end of next summer. So yeah, I'm kind of semi-freelance, as me and Jared, as I spoke about. It gives me some really nice security. It gives me a base. I live in Sussex. I live 5-minute drive from the cricket ground. It's my home. Me and my wife live here. Hopefully we'll be raising our daughter here and things like that. So it's nice that, say, I'm playing away in the T10 tournament. If I get injured, for example, I come back here. I have, the physio, the treatment. I have everything I need to come back to. And obviously from Sussex's side, I'm obviously just, for the English summer, I'm obviously 100% committed to playing for Sussex. I'm not going off anywhere to play in the CPL or anything like that. And obviously Sussex have to give me permission to go and play in all these tournaments. So if I'm carrying a niggle or, the physio doesn't think I'm quite ready to go and play somewhere, then, they have the power to, not issue me an NOC and then, I can't go. So I'm very grateful for Sussex to, keeping me within the kind of system 12 months of the year and giving me that security and that base.
And so your situation in some ways is quite unique when it comes to T20 cricketers, because a lot of them are purely freelancers. Someone like Chris Gayle, for example, has nothing to do with he probably got a few games for the West Indies when he's asked to play, but he doesn't have an ongoing contractual obligation to them. How hard is it for freelancers generally? Because obviously they haven't got the support you have to fall back on in terms of injury management, for example, and loss of revenue during something like COVID.
Exactly. That's, I think about it a lot. I think sometimes, what if I was away playing and you get injured, then you have to come home and you have to source your own, physio care, health care. If you need an operation, you need to have your own insurance. There's so many things that, I'm very lucky and you take.
Plus training facilities. I mean, they may not have access to training facilities.
Exactly. You have to find somewhere to train. Like, I'm lucky I've been training today. I had a gym session and some running, and whilst the boys were playing their 4-day match. And it gives me a sense of being in, a team as well. A lot of the boys are my friends, my wife's friends with a lot of the players' wives. So I'm still very much part of the squad and the team, and it just makes life a lot easier than perhaps it could be otherwise.
Fantastic, Tymal. So we spoke a little bit about your IPL deal, and we've had Jay Devanutkat on this podcast previously, and he talked about what the pressures at price tag brings, and he was over $1 million, you were over £1 million. Did that come with a lot of added pressure on the field, off the field? How did you deal with that kind of sudden explosion of interest in this new guy, Mills, that some people had heard about? Obviously, we'll put up the link to that Chris Gayle dismissal, but you weren't really on a lot of people's radars until that IPL contract was announced.
Yeah, it was strange. Obviously, I came and I played a 3-match T20 series for England in India in the January, which was obviously perfect timing, and I bowled well in a series where kind of bat was dominating ball. I still managed to bowl well, and that obviously got my name out there. And it was a perfect storm for me. Obviously, I bowled well in the leagues through the winter. I came to India, I bowled well, and then I had full availability for the IPL, whereas I think it was the Champions Trophy that summer. So most of the kind of the big names were having to leave the IPL after the group stage, whereas I had full availability. So that helped my cause. And then literally on the eve of the auction, I think Mitchell Starc pulled out of the IPL. So RCB obviously had a need for a left arm quick bowler, and they obviously had a lot of money in their purse available, because Starc's contract was obviously, I think, even bigger than what I ended up getting. But if I'm being honest, when I got out there, it was the only pressure there would have been put upon myself or from social media. And, I don't put any pressure on myself. I'm pretty good at trying to blocking out the noise when I'm in the middle. When I'm out there about to bowl, I ended up bowling the first ball of that whole IPL. I could have been anywhere. It just happened we were in Hyderabad playing there. I could have been Hove where I am now. I could be playing in a local club game. I think I'm pretty good at kind of just focusing on the batsman at the other end. And I remember when I first flew out to Bangalore, Dan Vittori and Trent Woodhill, who were the head coach and assistant coach, they took me for a beer and just said, "Mate, don't even think about the price tag or anything. We picked you because we wanted you. We thought you were good enough, and don't worry about anything like that." So the only pressures that could have been there would be in the media and social media, but I'd like to think I blocked that out pretty well. And unfortunately, that IPL that year didn't go how I wanted it to go. I got injured about halfway through the tournament and I wasn't able to play. When I did play, I did okay. I didn't do terribly. But I didn't end up justifying the price tag that I ended up going for. But I'm desperate to get another crack at it and hopefully do well in the future.
We're really hoping you're back in the IPL. But, I mean, you did pretty well. You played, I think, 8 games and took 8 wickets, or was it 5 games and 8 wickets? Because that's a decent return at a ground like the Chinnaswamy, which is a bowler's graveyard. And all we see there is runs and lots of them.
Yeah, look, it's a tough place to bowl. But I loved it. I loved the IPL. I loved the atmosphere, the sense of occasion. I remember we were playing at Eden Gardens and I was fielding out on the boundary somewhere and, I took a second and I kind of just looked around and kind of just soaked it in and appreciated it. It's the biggest crowd that I have and I haven't played in a bigger crowd since, 70,000 or whatever it is that they get in at Eden Gardens. And it's just pretty cool, isn't it? It's not every day. Look, I haven't been able to go back since and I don't know if I ever will. So I'm glad I took that moment just to kind of soak it in and have a look at and kind of do a 360 of the ground and really enjoy it. And as I said, hopefully I can get back out there and hopefully give a better account of what I can do on the field.
And I'm sure you will. Eden Gardens has actually now got a reduced capacity because they've put seats in. You only had steps earlier where everyone would just cram in. So you had over 120,000 people sitting and watching test matches. I mean, absolutely incredible scenes. But Tymal, let's maybe move on a little bit to your teammates at the RCB. Because, I mean, you played in what was a star-studded lineup. You've got, obviously, you've got the big man, Chris Gayle, the one that you dismissed to kick everything off. You've got King Kohli. And you've got probably one of the greatest batsmen to have played the game, A.B. de Villiers. What was it like being in that dressing room with those guys? And what are they like in the dressing room? Are there a couple of funny stories you can share with our listeners?
It's difficult. So Virat was actually injured for the first couple of games. He had a shoulder injury, so he was out. So he didn't play the first couple. He then came back after 2 or 3 games. Yeah, you know what? Like, this might not be the answer you want, but it wasn't that different to any other dressing room I've been like. They are just guys at the end of the day. They're just, blokes like you and me, away from the game. When you're back at the hotel, they're playing pool, playing table tennis, whatever, chilling by the swimming pool, in the gym, whatever.
And they're quite competitive at even table tennis. As it gets
of course, it's table tennis especially. We had some good players. But looking when you're involved in the tournament, when you're in the bubble, you kind of just get wrapped up in it. We had other big names, Shane Watson, Yuzi Chahal, Kedar Jadhav. We had a very good squad. We probably weren't the most balanced squad. We were an excellent top 7 and then 5 bowlers coming in 8 through 11. It's difficult to say. I don't know if I have any funny stories, but when you're filming all the TV adverts that go with the IPL, there's always something going on. You have all the different sponsor stickers on your helmet. They all want, their pound of flesh. And I remember myself and Yuzi Chahal laying on a mattress in bed together, dreaming about cricket for whatever this mattress company was that is sponsoring the team for a TV advert that we had to do. So that's maybe a bit of a funny story. I can't say I've done that too many times with another cricketer. But yeah, look, the IPL is like no other competition, and I've played in pretty much all of them. It's obviously it's much bigger, much grander. There's so much going on, and it's good fun.
That is a brilliant story. I've got to dig out this ad. Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere, but
I'm sure it will be somewhere.
That sounds absolutely amazing, Tymal. But let's move on to kind of other things around fast bowling. So obviously, you run a company called the Pace Journal. So let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing around fast bowling. Then we can talk about your thoughts on other fast bowlers that are currently playing the game.
Yeah, sure. So, look, the account's been going a couple of years. I didn't start it. I came on board at the start of the year. So it's been nice during lockdown, during COVID, and it's going to be something else to kind of pour my energy into. So, my business partner Shabazz Chowdhury, he set up the company a couple of years ago. So pretty much he was coming through the system as a fast bowler, and then when he was kind of 17 to 19 years old, he kind of fell victim to overcoaching, over practicing, changing his action, and he pretty much lost the ability that he had kind of when he was coming through, and he ended up kind of falling out of the game. So he ended up taking obviously time away from cricket, went into the real world as such, and then he decided to start this as kind of a passion project, as a way to give back to cricketers out there who might go through the similar things, trying to obsess over their actions and copy somebody else, maybe get down on themselves when they're not bowling well. And basically we speak to fast bowlers of all different levels. We've spoken to the likes of Ishant Sharma, Jofra Archer, the guys at the very top, but then we've also spoken to kind of guys that are making their way through. Some guys maybe you haven't heard of that hopefully might come play international cricket one day. The current series we have running on our Instagram channels with Shakib Mahmood, who's obviously just made his England debut, which is exciting to see for us. And because we feel everybody will have a different story to tell. As I said, Ishant Sharma's will be a very different story to Jofra Archer, to Shakib Mahmood, to Tino Best. So hopefully if you follow our channels, you'll read something that we speak to these guys and you'll think, okay, yeah, I'll try that, or that resonates with me. And so what we do is we interview them, we chop up the interview and put it out on our Instagram account. It's a bit more digestible, and then at the end of each series, we're going to be releasing the full podcast on our website and on the podcast channels. And we've got some plans to expand beyond the Instagram as well. We're working on a few things as well to try and get a little bit more kind of content for myself and a bit more input on my thoughts on fast bowling, and Shabazz is also, because he studies the game. Even though he obviously wasn't able to make it as a professional, he still loves fast bowling. He studies it. He's just so passionate about it. He loves it, and he's got a lot of knowledge. So yeah, look, we've got a lot of plans to expand it. We've got a big audience in India, so we definitely look to tap into that. And look, in the future, we're going to hope to come out to India and try and host some type of kind of pace clinic, pace camp type of thing. Obviously, when the world is in a bit of a better and safer place. So that, obviously that's been put on hold for now. But yeah, I've been really excited. It's given me something to do. And then it's kind of inspired me a little bit. As you say, I've been documenting my return to cricket after COVID. I just bought a tripod and I stick up my phone, and I've been recording my own returning to bowling. I've been putting it on my Instagram, and again, there's a little bit of cross-reference there between Pace Journal, myself, and just talking a little bit of fast bowling.
That sounds amazing. I wish I had something like this growing up. I wouldn't then be bowling at 60 miles an hour. But, this sounds fantastic. Maybe tell us a little bit about your thoughts on we're an Indian cricket podcast. So what are your thoughts on this Indian bowling lineup? Have you been following what they've been doing? They did pretty well in England. They did well in Australia as well. Is this possibly the best that India's ever produced in your view?
Yeah, they've got genuine kind of quick bowlers now, haven't they? A lot's been documented and made of kind of the turnaround that Ishant Sharma's had in his career. He came and played for Sussex, so he was playing for my county before that Test series against England over here. So he was well used to England conditions by the time that series came around, and he did really well down here, and he fitted in with the boys really well. He loved it. We're on the coast down here, so I know he liked obviously the freedom that you don't necessarily get in India of just being able to go for a walk around.
He can't really hide, can he, when he's 7 feet tall?
So, Ishant's obviously a skill bowler. And that's another thing we speak about at Pace Journal. He's a great example of somebody. Sometimes guys, so he's a brilliant in-swing bowler, isn't he? Right arm in-swing bowler. A lot of guys, it's almost frowned upon to be an in-swing bowler. So you must swing the ball away from the right-hander. And okay, so then guys try to change and then they lose it, and then they can't get it back. So he's fully embraced the type of bowler that he is. You see Kemar Roach do the same in the Test series against England, kind of swinging it into the right-hander and then coming around the wicket to the left-hander and swinging it away. That's one thing we're really big on in Pace Journal. It's something that I'm really big on. It's place your strengths, identify your strengths, make them super strengths. So that's something that he's done really well. And then obviously Mohammed Shami as well. He's kind of come back. It looks quicker. He's pushed in and around 145 Ks. And then obviously Bumrah, he's, for me, one of the best bowlers in the world. I was unfortunate enough to face him in that England versus India T20 series. Faced two balls. The first ball almost took my head off, and then the second ball I happily hit to Virat Kohli at slip. So I did a podcast recently with Wisdom about kind of the greatest T20 bowler of all time, and we all agreed that Malinga was the greatest T20 bowler of all time, but we all also agreed that in 5 to 8 years' time, Jasprit Bumrah could definitely be that man, such as his, the path he's on. He's a brilliant fast bowler.
Brilliant. And when you say that you talk about players who've lost their game because of overcoaching. I think the person that comes to our mind as Indian cricket fans is Irfan Pathan. He had a beautiful outswinger from the left-hander, and he just lost it because he started we started trying to make him an all-rounder and batting him at 3 and all of that stuff, and he just lost the ability to swing the ball. And of course, Ishant had that crazy spell against Ponting in 2007, 2008, which I think Indian fans still sometimes watch because we'd never seen an Indian fast bowler actually terrorize an Australian batsman. It was always the other way around. So, Ishant actually brought a lot to Indian fans and a lot of joy, and he's doing really well, and I think we're really, really glad about that. Tymal, a couple of things before we wrap up. I know you're short on time. So, the first bit, I know you've spoken to Cricinfo about this, and obviously growing up in England, there was an article I think George Dobell put together about racism in cricket and issues around that. Now, did you follow what went on at the start of the England-West Indies series and Michael Holding coming out and Ebony Rainford-Brent talking about that? What was your reaction to that growing up and playing cricket in India? Because it was quite emotional for a lot of us.
I watched
playing cricket in England, of course. Sorry.
I watched that the piece that Sky did live as it went out. I remember watching it at home. It was really, really powerful. It was really refreshing and nice to see guys given the platform and the freedom to speak as freely as they did, as emotionally as obviously Mikey and Ebony both spoke. And I spoke to George Dobell at Cricinfo about my experiences in the county game and playing international cricket. And look, I was very honest. I can't say I've experienced racism playing cricket. As I said in the article, look, I'm sure if I had a magic ability to look back on every single conversation and every bit of dressing room interaction I've had, I'm sure there will be some things in there that could be construed as racist or inappropriate. But to me, there was never any malice. I can't say I've ever walked away from a situation thinking, Jesus, that I didn't enjoy that. So I've been very lucky. But one thing I have experienced is the lack of other, brown faces pretty much playing cricket in England. I grew up in a predominantly white area of England, so that's it's to be expected. There wasn't many other black people in my school, in my class, or anything like that. That's just where I grew up, kind of demographically. But I'm sure there are a lot of wasted, talent out there in the UK, especially inner cities, that potentially is going untapped in the county system and obviously all the way through to England level. So I think there needs to be a bit more done, or a lot more done, in terms of accessibility. Cricket's not it's not an accessible sport. It's not an easy sport to just get into. You need equipment. You need the ability to travel. So both of those things are expensive. So if you can't afford either of those things, you're probably not, cricket's not the sport for you. Whereas football, for example, you need a pair of football boots and some shin pads, and then that's it. Your kit is given, your kit's provided to you by, if you just want to just play for a local team. And as I said, you just need some boots and some shin pads, and that's it. Whereas cricket, you need spikes, you need a bat, you need pads, you need gloves, you need helmet, you need box, you need whites, you need everything. You need a bag. You need to be able to cart it all around. So
I used to travel 2 hours, didn't you, to train even as a kid?
Exactly. And you hear about that a lot. And I had to, when I was on the Essex Academy, I had to. Luckily, my school I was doing my A levels at the time. My school were very good at allowing me 2 days a week to have half days. So I'd leave school at lunchtime. I'd get a bus to Bury St Edmunds. I'd get the train to Ipswich. I'd get another train to Chelmsford. I'd train, and then I'd do the whole thing. I get home, kind of close to midnight twice a week. So you have to. Cricket's not an easy sport, unfortunately, for a lot of people, unless you live within, a stone's throw of a major county ground, or you have, parents who can ferry you around everywhere. But again, it's a time-consuming sport, isn't it? It's parents work,
except the whole day.
Exactly. So parents work, parents have lives. You have other children who also potentially have their other interests. So it takes a lot. Cricket has a lot of barriers to potentially catch people out. So, and that obviously it affects the disadvantaged more than it does the advantaged. And unfortunately, there's more disadvantaged, people of colour than there are white people in England. So hopefully things will get done on the back of this summer and this year, and things that have been spoken about, actions that have been taken. Hopefully more initiatives will start to make cricket just that bit more accessible in schools and underprivileged areas, because you don't know who you'll find. You might find the next fast bowler, the next great batsman, the next mystery spin bowler. You you just don't know unless you kind of really cast that net far and wide.
Tymal, 2 more questions before we go. We call edges and sledges. Are you a person who sledges batsmen? Are you one that will get into their face and get quite nasty with them, or are you more in your own bubble?
I'd say for the majority of the time, I'm in my own bubble. I reckon for every 10 T20 games, there'll be 1 or 2 games where for some reason something will click in me. It's normally not even something somebody's done. It's just that I've arrived at the ground in a particular mood one day. I remember we played against Kent here last summer in the T20 Blast, and I was just in a bit of a bad mood. I don't know why. And I got a young batsman for Kent called Ollie Robinson. I got him out, and I kind of shooed him off as I was running past him. And I'd never even spoken a word to the lad before in my life. He's done nothing to offend me. No reason for me to give him a little send off, but I did. And I'm a big one for the kind of the team atmosphere. I can when you have those days where the rest of the teammates are kind of all up for it and you're flying in the field and there's a bit of chat out there. I really enjoy those nights when you feel you're on top of a pair of batsmen that are out there, because obviously there's 11 of you out there and there's only 2 of them. So those moments, those battles. I remember last summer we played Somerset and they had Barbara Azam and Tom Banton opening the batting.
Decent.
We scored. Yeah, very good. So we knew it was a big game for us. That we've got a really good bowling attack, but we batted first, scored around 170, I think 180. You'd have to fact check me, but they got off to a really good start. They were 70, 80 for naught, but we were all over them. They weren't free flowing. We knew if we got these 2 out, we backed ourselves to win the game, and it was a really good atmosphere. Quite an intimidating atmosphere out there, even though we weren't taking wickets. And then eventually we dismissed both of the guys, and we went on to win the game. So. I wouldn't say I'm a big sledger, but I'm certainly not shy getting involved when the opportunity comes about.
And the related question we always ask along with the sledge is, would you run the batsman out at the non-striker's end? So, the infamous Mankad. Yeah.
Do you know what? It's physically impossible for me to do, I think. My run-up is so long. Yeah, I'd have to start slowing down halfway through my run-up if I wanted to knock the bails off. So they'd know I was stopping. The famous the one, who was it? The bowl in the
Ashwin and Butler. Ashwin and Butler.
No, in the under-19 World Cup final.
Oh, Kemo Paul.
Kemo Paul. Yeah, that one made me laugh. That was cheeky. And then it went off celebrating like he just torn out the middle stump.
He was a few inches out. He wasn't even a foot or anything out. The batsman was a few inches out. Poor guy.
So that one did make me laugh. But I can't say I ever have, and I can't imagine that I would. But it's in the rules, so I don't. When it happens, I don't get the uproar. It's in the rules. If they change the rules and you can't do it, then they would have done that. So that's where I stand on it.
Interesting. How much are you looking forward to the 100, which is going to be played next year, and the World T20? And next year is a big year for you, Tymal.
Yeah, so it's a shame because this year, in theory, was going to be a great year. I remember I was kind of going back to January time, kind of looking forward to the year. I had a really nice year planned out where I go to the PSL and play in February and March. Then I come home, have a little bit of time off, and then I play the T20 Blast for Sussex, May, June, and then the 100. So I had a contract with Southern Brave for July, August. And then obviously the T20 World Cup was supposed to be October, November time. So for me, if I kind of did well at the start of that summer, I'd give myself hopefully an opportunity to kind of get my hat in the ring for that T20 World Cup squad. Obviously, things haven't worked out that way, but I'm really glad that we're going to play the Blast, kind of a shortened tournament starting at the end of August. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we'll just see what happens for the winter. And then, next summer, hopefully we go through that whole process again. The Blast, the 100, hopefully I'll be back with Southern Brave. There's still a few kind of kinks to iron out there with how the squads are going to kind of carry over to next year and who's, obviously availability and things like that. So, the 100, I think it'll be really good. I've been quite opinionated. I've been quite open with my opinions. There's been a lot of kind of bashing it on Twitter by people that are, afraid of change pretty much and don't like change. Whereas I obviously come from the opinion and the standpoint of I've played T20 franchise cricket all around the world and I can see what good it can do when done right. It's something that the Blast just can't replicate due to the amount of teams. When you have 18 teams it dilutes the standard of cricket, and also you're playing at a lot of grounds that are, they're not venues either. They're not spectacles on TV for the casual fan. So hopefully by condensing it into the 8 teams at the 8 biggest grounds with the 90 odd best English players plus 3 overseas players per team, in theory, for me, just seeing things black and white, that's going to be a pretty special product. So hopefully, it's a shame we're not getting to see that this summer, but hopefully next summer we'll be able to see it.
Well, we're getting to hear you on the BBC, which has been great as well. So so well done on that, Tymal. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for being so open and so generous with your time.
No, thanks.
Hopefully we'll have you back on again soon. Best of luck for the rest of the season and going forward 2021. And hopefully we'll see you soon in person one day when all this COVID stuff is open and we can actually shake hands.
100%, mate. Well, I don't know if we'll ever shake hands. I'm sure shaking hands might be a thing of the
we could
past.
do an elbow bump.
Yeah, few elbow bumps from now on. But thank you for having me. It's been good to chat, and I'll be happy to speak to you guys again some other time.
Cheers, Tymal. Thanks so much. There you have it, guys. A fantastic interview with Tymal Mills. As usual, please write in. And I know you have been writing in. It's been making our weekend, actually, one of the tweets you sent in. So please do write in on One Tip One Hand at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We love to hear from you guys. Contact at onetiponehand.com. And any of you guys at educational institutions, as Ashwin pointed out, PhD in cricket, we're up for that, guys. So please let us know. Thanks again for recommending us to your friends and your family. Thanks for the reviews you've been leaving us. Please keep doing that. It helps put the show out every week. More and more people discover it, the more ratings and reviews you give it. And we will be back next week with more fun chat. Hopefully, even Varun will join us next week. It'll be an absolutely cracking episode. So, guys, until next time, we are signing off from the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. See you soon.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुटबॉल.
Presenting Football Should Ball, a show about 3 friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes 3, maybe even 5. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my 2 sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthik Iyer.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Iyer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumors, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Should Ball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.